Hi everyone, it's Tanya and welcome to today's video. And today I'm going to talk about 3 the best and 3 the worst books I have read so far in 2020. I'm going to cheat a little bit in this video because choosing the best books was actually the hardest. Like, I have read so many books that I genuinely love throughout this whole year. I mean, the first part of this year, that I couldn't possibly choose just 3. So that's why I'm cheating just a little bit. But it's not gonna do any bad to anybody, so I allow myself to cheat. And I thought I would start with the books I liked the least. I guess the best word in this case would be the books I personally liked the least. Those are not bad books objectively. Those are just books that I personally didn't like. If you like those books, that's wonderful. Continue loving them. I have nothing against that. It's just that I didn't. And okay, so the first book I don't actually have a copy of. I read it in the beginning, very beginning of January. I DNF'd it actually, and that was Children of Blood and Bone. I was very excited about that duology. I have heard so many people absolutely loving it and adoring it, and I was so convinced that I was going to love it too, that I bought 2 hard copies of the first book and the second, and I DNF'd the first one and I didn't even pick up the second one. No reason, there was no reason to do that. Why I didn't like it is that because I guess for me it was too fast paced. I usually care a lot for characters and I didn't have enough time to start caring for them. I was kind of just already thrown into the action following the main girl, and I wasn't really interested in her. I wasn't really cheering for her. I didn't have enough time to start loving her. That's why I really couldn't get into it. And also everything was so fast paced. There were so many things happening in just the first 24 hours, and I was just oh wow, how is this possible? So many things happening in just the first day. I don't even remember what happened, but I remember there were so many things. She was fighting in the lesson, and then something happened, and then she had to go to that city far away, and then she found the princess there, and then the guards were after them, and so many things. And then her village burned, she almost lost her father, and I'm all of it in first 24 hours. This is a little bit too intense. This, I don't know, I like realistic books. I like something rooted in reality, and that for me was totally unrealistic. That for me was just book written purely to entertain the reader, so the reader would not be bored. And I'm just not that type of a reader. I understand, I can see why people like it. I'm just not the reader for that. I need more time. I need to get to know my characters. I need to get to know their struggles. I'm not really interested in plot. I don't need a plot as long as I like the character. That is the first book that I really didn't like. And then the second book that also I couldn't get into, and again it's quite popular, a lot of people talk about it, a lot of people like it, it's Sarafina. I also DNF'd it because I was just so bored. She was tending her garden in her mind throughout the first, I don't know, 50 pages, I don't know how many pages I went through, and she was constantly going through her garden, and I'm why? Can we just do something else and not just tend your garden in your mind? I was just bored. I was bored with this book, so that's why I DNF'd it. The third book that I didn't like is Our Castle by the Sea. This book started so well. After half of this book, it just went downhill for me. The ending was just ridiculous for me. So basically this book is about Second World War, about a family living in this lighthouse, and their mom was a German. It's about the struggles that their mom as a German faced during the time of beginning Second World War in England. But then the book ends in 1941. It ends like a happy end. It's the author was kind of trying to write a happy end of the story. I will spoil it now for you. Like, you can skip it, you can totally skip it, but I don't recommend reading this book, so that's why I feel like it's okay if I spoil it for you. But if you want to, skip it. So basically in the end they write like, their mom is in a very good camp where she can paint and she meets a lot of good people living in that camp for German people in, like, you know, in England during Second World War. So like they isolated all the German people, but you know, it's still like a prison, basically like a prison for German people. So she's in a very good prison where she can paint, and she has lots of friends in that prison. Her sister, the description of her sister in the end of the book is that like she is plump and happy. 1941, the war is practically starting and everybody is happy and plump, and I'm just like, no I don't think that it's like a good book representing the time of the war. I don't think that it does a good job at that. Like, obviously, like, I only know about the war, like how it was in Russia, but like no one was plump and happy even in 45, even in like 1945 when the war ended. I mean, people obviously were happy that the war is over. No one was plump, you know? So basically, yeah, this book, I feel like it was just very idealistic, very romantic, the ending was just like bad. I like the beginning. I feel like the beginning was good, but then it just went downhill. Okay, and now to the best 3 books that I have read so far in 2020. Again, here I'm cheating a little bit because, like I said, I have read so many books that I genuinely love. I'm going to only talk about books that I read from May till now, because in the beginning of May I made a video where I talked about best books I have read so far in 2020, and so there are like a lot of books that I really adore on that list, and if I also included those books on this list, like, I couldn't possibly choose just 3 so that's why I will send you to that video. I will link it up here so you can watch it. So there will be the best books I have read in the beginning of 2020 till April. And in this video I'm going to talk about books that I have read so far in 2020 from May to July, you know. So I chose 3 best books, and also I have a few very honorable mentions very honorable mentions because I just had to mention those books. I really like them. They were not quite like there for me, like absolute best, but they are so good. Highly recommend them as well. So I included them on my list of very honorable mentions. Okay, so we will start with very honorable mentions. Okay, my first very honorable mention is actually right here. First very honorable mention is Teal by Danielle Kahneman. This book is shortlisted for International Man Book Prize 2020. Read it in that vlog. You can watch if you still haven't. In this book, I really liked the narration style, and I really liked the storytelling aspect of it. This book, the narration in this book is not linear. We are constantly jumping from one episode in life of this main character Teal to another episode in his life. In the beginning of a chapter, you never know which episode that is, how old he is in this chapter. First chapter starts with him being a child, but after that it's all like, you know, different parts of his life, and you kind of have to piece the story together while reading the book. Another aspect that I really liked is that Teal is almost never in the center of the story. Teal is always on the side. Practically every chapter follows a certain character. Like in first chapter it's his father, in second chapter I already forgot, but someone else. Teal is present, but Teal is always somewhere on the side. Like, the whole story is connected together by the presence of Teal. Teal is the main character, but he is just never the center. So I thought that was interesting. We start with him being a child. His father was this philosopher. They were living in the mill. His father was actually a miller, but he was also like a philosopher, and he never really wanted to be a miller. He always wanted to be like a scientist, this educated man. He had lots of books about magic. He also was kind of a magician as well. And so one day these 2 scholars come to his village, and because his father was a magician, they accuse him of being like warlock, like a witch, you know, like witch hunts. After this, the boy runs away. He becomes this performer. He travels from one city to another. He entertains the public. He creates a circus, and you just have to read it. It's actually it was interesting. I guess like the first, I had to push myself through the first like maybe 30 pages because I wasn't used to the narration, to the language. But once I got used to it, I actually really enjoyed this book. So this is my first very honorable mention. My next very honorable mention is Once Upon a River by Diane Satterfield. I finished this book like a few days ago and I loved it so much. It was so easy to read, it was so gripping. Like you read it and it's not even like, you know, it doesn't feel like you have to push yourself through certain parts. It was just so natural and easy. I loved the dark, mysterious, also like scientific atmosphere in this book, because this is like I guess I don't know if it's like Victorian Regency. I'm so bad at like English periods, history periods, but it's the time when Darwin publishes his work and says that like humankind developed from monkeys, and so it also kind of defines this slightly like scientific interests of certain characters. Like for example, there is this character who is a nurse, and so she is like very much into science and experiments, and this also like adds a very interesting angle to this story. Also, I really liked this part. I really appreciated how many different characters were represented in this book. Like there were people with mental issues, there were people with physical issues, there were black people, there were white people. There were so many different characters, and all of them were written with respect, and all of them were written with like understanding and love, and there were no cliches, no caricatures. I really appreciated that about this book. I feel like the characters of this book are a very strong part, and not just like the main characters, but also like the side characters who are like a crowd. I always like imagine them like in a crowd. So because this book has a lot of to do with certain like inn where people come and drink and people tell stories there, and so it's like there were so many people. I always kind of imagine them as a crowd. Even like this crowd has a very like specific character to it, and I really liked it. But like obviously the main characters are brilliant. I feel like Diane Satterfield in this book has done such a good job with her characters, and also like the whole plot, it was really masterfully written. I would highly recommend it. So mysterious and dark, at the same time not scary, because like I am very bad at with scary books. I'm like easily scared, and this book wasn't that, so I didn't have any nightmares, which is good. Yeah, I really like this book, so good, highly recommended. It's a mystery story about this girl who was found in the river, and everybody thought that she was dead, but then she suddenly just like wakes up. First it's a mystery, like who is this girl, where she is from, but then like two families recognize her and claim that like she's theirs. And it's also like about family tragedies and also about grief. I really liked it. I think it's a brilliant one. Now I really want to read Diane Satterfield's other books, so yeah, highly recommend it. My last very honorable mention is The Blind Owl by Sadeh Hedayat. This is a piece of Iranian classical literature, very short, and this book deals with obsession, with insanity. This book is very difficult to describe because about insanity, and it's like about this guy. He narrates the story from the first person. There are so many like different pictures in his mind, like in particular of this woman, and he desires her, like he is kind of obsessed with her. It's this woman in black dress. In first chapter, she is just like a stranger whom he just saw from the window, but then she somehow comes to his house. Honestly, there are so many things I didn't understand about this book, so you know, it's hard for me also to talk about it. In the second chapter, however, this woman is his wife, whom he desires, but who never for some reason sleeps with him, but sleeps with all the other men. But at the same time, he is very sick in the second chapter, and there is this nanny who always takes care of him. So obviously, like, honestly, I couldn't tell if it's like a real woman, if she is really his wife, if she is just a fruit of his like insane imagination. Like, I couldn't tell you that. I need to read this book, and I really want to find a different also translation. This is so complicated. But also I feel like it's complicated because it's about an insane person. It's just insane. So I need to come back to this book one day, maybe a little bit later. But this is my last very honorable mention. Okay, and so now we are off to 3, well actually 4, because I'm cheating again. 4 best books that I have read in the second quarter of 2020. I'll start with my new favorite author, which I have discovered during Koreadathon. Most of you probably already understand who this author is. It is Han Kang. I actually read somewhere that she's like considered a Korean phenomenon, and like I can totally see why. I have read 2 of her books so far, and I really liked both of them. However, this is my favorite. Like, I have to say that I don't know, I just really felt like, you know, I felt things while I was reading this book. This book is so painful. This is about an uprising in Gwangju in 1980. This uprising was very brutally suppressed by the police, and so this book is not about politics, it's not about the uprising itself, it's about the pain that the city went through, it's about the pain that people went through, the pain that didn't finish with the end and suppression of the uprising. It's about the pain that continued on after it in like so many people's lives, and how this uprising affected lives of so many people, including author herself, even though she wasn't really present there during the uprisement. And something I really liked in this book, and I kind of like, I don't know, again, I guess resonated with the idea, is that so in this book Han Kang, she compares soul to glass, and she says that like once glass has been broken, you can never piece it back together again, and the same is with the soul. Once you break it, it will stay broken till the end of the person's days. And I guess like I don't know, I really resonated with this like comparison. And it's also so fitting for this book because in each chapter we follow a different character who had something to do with the uprising. First chapter, it's this young boy who is a middle schooler, and he came to this place where they were collecting bodies of murdered people that were murdered by the police during the uprising, and he came there initially to look for his friends because they disappeared, both of them, a brother and a sister, and he stayed there to help with the bodies. In the second chapter we follow a story of a ghost, actually, of a ghost of one of young boys who was murdered. The chapter portrays like how the soul is also suffering even after death, and after seeing like the body and like remembering what happened. And then in the third chapter it will be a girl who was in this first chapter was taking care of the bodies, and she's like a survivor of this whole event, but how she is also broken inside. And in other chapters, other characters who weren't really connected to the previous characters, but just other people who were also there and survived, and how they are broken now. So it's just, you know, it's a story about pain that was there and still is there, pain and struggle and guilt, shame. So this is a very painful book actually, but I also feel like it's very relevant, like in light of all the like current events in the world. This is a brilliant book. I finished it like just recently, and I really liked it. I feel like I prefer this book even to the vegetarian, and like the vegetarian is brilliant, like don't get me wrong, like this is a brilliant book. It's just that I feel like this is even better, at least like for me. But these two books are also very different. They deal with different topics. So this one deals with like communal tragedy and communal struggles, and this book is about personal struggles, about mental problems and mental health, about a young woman who decides to become a vegetarian because she had very invasive and like very like terrifying dreams. She thought that the dreams might be caused by eating meat, and so she decides to become a vegetarian, and how this like little act of decision that she makes for herself sparks misunderstanding in her family. But it's more than that. It's about a woman and her part in the society, and how she perceived in the society by different members of her family, people around her, and struggles that they face, and how often they aren't really seen as people, how often they're seen as just like an object that is supposed to perform a certain function, not really a person. So this is also a brilliant book and a really good one. This book actually won Man Booker Prize. This was nominated, I think it got into shortlist, but didn't get the prize. Really, I feel like Han Kang is now one of my favorite authors, and I need to read other books by her. I'm already like looking forward to buying her third book, which is The White Book, and as far as I know, that book deals with like grief in family. So you see, she picks very like painful topics for her books, but she does a really good job in talking about those topics. Like, also something I particularly like about this book is that it isn't like overly dramatic. It's not trying to make any sensation out of the tragedy that happened in the city. Kind of makes you feel the pain that people felt at that time without making it like, you know, overly dramatic or overly romanticized. It's nothing like that. It's just the pure raw pain. It's just such a good book. I just want you to read it. That's what I want you to do, to read it. And now on a similar topic also of like communal struggle, like trying to stand up to the government, is a book that is currently shortlisted for International Man Booker Prize 2020, and this is The Enlightenment of the Green Gage Tree by Shuku Fayazar. This is about an Iranian revolution in Iran and struggles that one particular family faced. All of these books talk about these topics through the perspective of like characters and how certain families or certain people were affected by this event in history of this particular country. So in this book we follow a family that also went through so much pain and struggle and loss, and has experienced like everything that they experienced was so unfair and like it shouldn't have happened. So in this book, this family trying to run away from Tehran after the revolution that happened there, they're trying to run away from this new government that has been established in the country, because the government is religious and strict and oppressive, and they are a very educated family and they want to stay free. So they run away in a remote, small, god-forgotten village in the north of Iran, and they hope that they will not be found there, and they will be able to preserve the books that they love. They will be able to preserve the lifestyle that they're used to. However, it doesn't happen. The new regime comes also even in that small village, and it's about all the struggles that the family faces. But it's very poetical and metaphorical. It's even told by a ghost. And it's also about grief, how family deals with loss, family kind of falling apart, but at the same time never losing connection with each other, and in the end like coming back together. So it's also like a family drama and a family saga. So there are so many beautiful things about this book, and I genuinely love it so much. I know that I will reread it at certain point in the future. So this is a brilliant book and also highly recommended. And the last book that I also want to introduce to you is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I also recently read it, I think in June, and I loved it. I've already ordered the second book in the series. It's about this man with a very fiery temper. He can be so angry sometimes, even because of very small things, but he just becomes so angry, like a bull. And like you cannot stop him at that point. He becomes very aggressive. In the beginning of this book we are kind of just introduced to him and his personality and this fiery temper of his, but at the same time you should, like, he is a good man. He's a hard-working man. He takes care of his family. He loves his children. He takes care of them. It's just that this temper of his sometimes just blows off, and like he has no control over his own temper. In the later part of this book, white people come to his community in Nigeria, and they start introducing like their religion, and they start to introduce like their government, like, we are bringing you new religion, your religion is all wrong, your beliefs are all wrong, we know the right God, we will teach you the right God, we will teach you the right way of life, like, you know, all this like white stuff that people did at that time. And it's about him being already not a young man. Obviously a lot of young people were taken by this new religion and this new lifestyle. Him being already like an adult person, he is just afraid of losing his culture, of losing his gods, of losing everything, and being afraid that, you know, his children will change into something else and they will forget him and they will forget their home country and everything. And so it's about his resistance, and at the same time resistance with that fiery temper of his that he has, and like what is it going to cost him. Such a brilliant book. I really liked it. I really enjoyed the portrayal of the culture of his tribe in this book. It was so interesting to read, something like totally different, and I haven't read of such similar cultures before. It was so interesting, like all the gods that they had, all the traditions that they had in his tribes. Obviously it's not perfect, like they had some really scary and terrifying rules, like for example if twins are born, like an abomination, and so the family had to get rid of twins. So it wasn't like a perfect ideal culture, but it's just the culture that they lived in, and like beliefs that they had being taken away from them by like white people who just came and claimed everything for themselves. Them like also trying to resist and trying to stand up, and also maybe not always being wise about it. Book about clash of religion, clash of beliefs, introduction of a very interesting culture which is beautiful in its own. So there you have it, guys. 3 worst or like books that I liked the least, and not actually 3 but a little bit more brilliant books that I absolutely liked and I read in so far in 2020. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you had fun. Maybe you have found some interesting book recommendations for yourself, and I hope you're having a very good day, staying safe, and I will see you tomorrow, because tomorrow reading rush starts, and again I will try and vlog for a week, maybe not daily, we will see. I will try daily. I hope it's going to work, and I hope you will enjoy it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I will see you tomorrow.